this, and thank you all our friends all across the world who were able to spare time today to really join us in this occasion. My name is Obiano Jundedigwe, investment analyst at HealthCap Africa. And today it's really amazing that we are finally putting out our impact report to the world. Why is this very important to us? For over a decade now, HealthCap Africa has been in the business of investing in Africa and really trying to create impact across 4 verticals in terms of gender equality, in terms of health and wellness, increasing or rather closing the gap, between maternal and child mortality, really ensuring that we have lesser women who go into labor dying off of not having access to healthcare, and also in terms of financial inclusion all across these verticals, and also ensuring that we are closing the gap in terms of job employment. We're ensuring that more people in Africa. We know that the typical thing people hear about Africa is that Africa is the poverty capital of the world. But things like this are not supposed to be, because when you check in terms of natural resources, Africa has a lot of that in abundance. And you'd wonder why people who have access to a lot of natural resources would struggle, to have all of this quality healthcare access, affordable healthcare access, financial inclusion. You would wonder why people who live in this region will struggle with all of these resources. And HealthCap Africa is really just trying to bridge that gap, ensuring that we are creating more affordable and more accessible healthcare for everyone. We are closing that gap as far as financial inclusion is concerned. And we are just also closing that gap as far as gender equality is concerned, and ensuring that we are ending poverty on the continent. Thank you all again for really joining us for this occasion. And just right about now, we will be starting. First, we will be sharing some of the things some of our partners have to say about their impact story generally and why this is important. In the world, everyone wants to create impact one way or the other. Everyone is trying to really just change things around them. And HealthCap Africa, we've identified that technology would play a very crucial role in ensuring that impact reaches even the most underserved communities in the world. And some of our partners, some of our investors, they agree with us, and they have some stories to share in this regard. And right about now, I would be sharing a video from Alan Chetrit, who has something to share about his impact story and why he thinks that what we are doing at HealthCap is really very important.
First of all, I want to thank the HealthCap for inviting me to share some of my views with the group here, and congratulations for amazing work that you're doing. I'm excited about all of that I read and observe about your activities. My name is Alain Chetrit. I am the chairman and founder of the Knowledge Impact Network, a nonprofit organization based in Virginia, United States, where we assemble people with knowledge who wish to share that knowledge with those who need it. We believe that capital alone, financial capital alone, is insufficient to solve some of the greatest world problems. So we believe that bringing knowledge and capital together makes a difference. And so our mission at the Knowledge Impact Network is to activate people who have gained enormous knowledge, and as opposed to sitting on it or not using it, to make it available to those who are creating new companies or advancing causes that are meaningful. And so we have at least 1,000 people involved in our network, willing to donate their time, and we act as conveners, organizing, as in the YPO parlance. We create forums. That these are circles, forums that are where we bring expertise and to help the entrepreneurs and others who are interested in the cause. And at the end of a period, we make their recommendations available to whether it's government agencies or companies or other groups who may be able to take an action on the recommendations this group might make. At the same time, people develop a self-confidence, a lot of new knowledge, of course, and friendships and development, and helps them with their business solutions. I got to this place by going through my own my own journey of impact. I would say that I started my impact investing in 2002 when I founded a company called Lab Connect, which is created to accelerate the development of new medicine. It was an idea. The idea is now about 750 employees across the world, with affiliation with numerous labs and other health technology companies. So that's been my journey when creating a for-profit business. In the non-profit side of my life, I was involved with the YPO leadership for a number of years, and during my tenure as on the international board of YPO, I created something called the YPO Global Impact Initiative, which is still active, and that was in 2012. The YPO Impact Initiative was to highlight members doing great things around the world, and to be able to highlight them so they would inspire others and create a multiplier effect. That has taken hold. This concept idea is still going. I chaired it for 8 or 9 years, and at a particular time, maybe it was 2020, right at the beginning of COVID, I thought that we should expand that and invite others with knowledge, whether they're YPOers or not, to be able to share their knowledge for the better good. And that's pretty much the mission. We have served at the Knowledge Impact Network a number of enterprises, whether in healthcare or in homelessness, or in helping artisans in different parts of the world to be able to be recognized and being able to get some acceleration in the projects they're working on. Today, I just got off a call on the nanoplastics forum, Impact Circle, where we had experts who came in and shared the enormous amount of research that has been done over decades that has not been acted upon. And now it's been accelerated with AI, where we know that the plastics are hurting people's health in many different ways. And now we're putting a group together with AI expertise in order to take all the research that's created in the world and put it forward in an understandable way for to be able to just create more action. So that's effectively what Knowledge Impact Network does. We believe that accelerating the development of companies and concepts and causes by bringing expertise to the table and having the experts share their views and then reduce that to recommendations that we can take actions on. And that's me, and I really commend you for what you're doing at HealthCap. And I hope we can activate and bring some of the experts we have to your investments and companies that you touch. Thank you very much.
All right, without wasting much time any longer, I also would really just go into introducing the GP of HealthCap Africa in the person of Dr. Ola Brown. Dr. Ola Brown is very passionate about impact investing in Africa. If you consistently follow her on Twitter, you would see how much she tweets about things around gender equality, women healthcare, things around financial inclusion, and really just making the African continent a better place. But just in case you are not very familiar with who Dr. Ola Brown is, I will be reading a short profile about her. Dr. Ola Brown is the general partner of HealthCap Africa, and this is her second fund. She studied medicine and surgery at the Hull York Medical School, after which she worked in acute medicine in the UK. She holds a master's degree in finance and economic policy from the University of London, and she's currently working towards her PhD in finance. And don't forget that the essence of today's meeting is for us to really talk about impact investing, and it's just beyond what we are doing right now. It's beyond the HealthCap Africa 2023 Impact Report. It's about impact generally in Africa and across the world. And once again, I appreciate everyone who has made out time to really join us for today's occasion. Thank you so much, Dr. Ola, for building HealthCap Africa, giving us an opportunity to really affect the lives of many people in Africa. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Dr. Ola Brown, and I appreciate everybody that has joined today. It's a busy day for a lot of people, and I appreciate taking out your time, and I promise that it's going to be a good use of your time. Today, we're going to be talking about impact investing and what that means, and I know it means different things to different people. And then we'll be talking about the HealthCap journey and this idea that you can do good whilst doing well. I think that stereotypically business and entrepreneurship has been associated with profit at any cost, by any means. And we believe that with our impact philosophy, that we can create impact while providing shareholder returns as well. So I'll be speaking a bit about impact investing, then moving on to some of the work that HealthCap has done in the space and highlighting some of our impact metrics that we have from our portfolio. And then I'll be talking a bit about venture capital. And I know that there's a lot of founders in the room that really want to know how to raise money, how to raise venture capital from their companies. So I'll be talking about venture capital and impact. And then finally, I'll be going on to talk about the business case for Africa and why investing in Africa is so impactful. So here we go. Welcome to the Impact Report launch at HealthCap, and our aim is really to transform health and wealth in Africa. And just a bit about me, I'm the general partner of HealthCap Africa, which is my second fund. I studied medicine and surgery at York. I hold a master's degree in finance and economic policy from the University of London. And I started one of the leading emergency service companies in West Africa, Flying Doctors Nigeria, which has served 40 out of 54 African countries. So like I said at the beginning, I'm going to be talking about impact investing, the history of impact investing, what impact investing is like today, conceptions and things that I guess people get a bit wrong about impact investing. And then I'll talk a bit about HealthCap Africa before talking about VC and VC in Africa. So what is impact investing? Impact investments are investments made with the intention to generate a measurable social and environmental return alongside a financial one. So a lot of people think that impact investing is just a way of investing purely for social purposes, but our definition is investing for social purposes and financial return. In terms of the history of impact investing isn't a new thing. So I've heard a lot of rhetoric saying that impact investing is this sort of new woke phenomenon that has just come up in the past 1 to 2 years. But actually, impact investing and the history of impact investing can be traced right back to 3,500 years ago. And actually, I've put a picture of a lady from the Bible called Lydia. And Lydia was a female founder, a female entrepreneur that decided to give a large percentage of her profit from this luxury clothing business that she had to the church. And that was her way of sort of measuring impact. And there's a lot of examples in history of people that have given money to certain causes where there was a financial, where they were running financially viable businesses, but they also made them have some sort of impact lens. And this is an example. She was in the luxury goods business, so sort of the biblical equivalent of LVMH or Tiffany's. And she was somebody that gave money to the church and made it actually a profitable business. And made that business a profitable business. So that's an example of somebody that we've heard of that has created impact through her investments. The next thing I wanted to talk about was really impact investing today and what that really means in a world where talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. And for me personally, in Africa, we all know that there's a lot of really, really talented entrepreneurs who are creating incredible companies, but they don't perhaps have the opportunities that would be provided for people that live outside Africa. So impact investing for us really means investments that make the world safer, that make the planet more sustainable, and bring more innovations to the market. And what are the most common misconceptions about impact investing? I think the first one, and the one that I really, really want to emphasize, is that impact investing means sacrificing financial returns and perhaps not making any financial return because you want to create impact. And I emphatically and passionately say that this isn't true. I think that impact and financial returns aren't mutually exclusive, and you don't have to choose one or the other. The second big misconception about impact investing is that measuring impact is really too difficult. I mean, what is impact? How do you measure it? Can you really come up with a numerical way of measuring impact? And we've been able to, through our report, actually speak to our portfolio companies and get out metrics from them that are impact driven. And I'll be sort of explaining how we did this and how we sort of worked with our portfolio companies to get those metrics. But I think simple impact metrics are something that almost every business can do. And the third, I guess, misconception that I wanted to highlight is that impact investing offers limited choice. I think that sometimes people think that impact investing is just climate investing or just green investing. But like the first example that I gave from 2000 years ago, impact can be a metric that is personal to you and something that you would like to change in the world. So that's the third misconception that I wanted to clear up. And the facts are that impact investment can offer competitive financial returns as well as social impact. And when you look at measurements, there are established frameworks for measuring impact, like the UN SDGs, that provide actually standardized methods for measuring impact and the outcomes of impact investments. And impact investments, span diverse sectors. So it's not just a single sector play. You can decide to play in the renewable energy space. You could decide to play in the affordable housing space. You could decide to play in the healthcare and education space. And all of those sectors are growing and becoming more innovative with time. About HealthCap, so what do we do? HealthCap Africa is the leading health tech and fintech investor on the African continent. And we built HealthCap on a track record of a 5x DPI, my first fund, which was not just one of the best performing funds in Africa, but actually this performance placed us at the top quartile of funds globally in terms of financial returns. So we've always focused on impact and financial returns at the same time. And we've been able to do that whilst delivering these top quartile global returns out of Africa. So in my first fund, we made investments like Tech Cabal. I'm sure everybody has heard of that company who's in the African tech space. And Tech Cabal is sort of the tech crunch, I would say, of Africa in terms of the media company that provides the sort of most robust coverage of technology companies in Africa. Paystack is one of the leading payment firms in Africa, and so is Flutterwave. And they've created jobs, provided access to education, but also produced great financial returns for the funds. Tech Cabal stories shaped the African tech ecosystem and received a follow-on Series A investment from Max Ventures. Paystack was eventually sold for $200 million to Stripe, which is a global American payments firm. And Flutterwave now plans to list on the American Stock Exchange for $3 billion at its last valuation. So for the HealthCap Fund, our current warehouse portfolio is really exciting. Deciding to become a specialist fund and invest only in fintech and health tech was one of the very, very rare sector-focused funds in VC in Africa. And that's why we decided to use our own money to de-risk the fund. So we've now invested in over 10 companies in health tech and fintech before we started raising any external capital. And those companies have had impact in over 10 countries with 2 million patients and customers served. In terms of jobs created, those 10 companies have created 13,000 indirect and direct jobs, and 50% of our portfolio have at least one female founder, which was very important to us. We've raised nearly $100 million in follow-on capital from over 110 global investors. And I just wanted to explain what follow-on capital is. So follow-on capital is when you invest in a company, and when we invest in a company, we invest in the pre-seed or seed stage. So we're usually the first investors or one of the first consortium of investors in the entire company. And one of the sort of strongest pieces of evidence that you've invested in a good company is when you have people follow on your investment. So people are excited about that investment and they want to follow on that investment and continue investing several years after you have. And our current portfolio has raised $100 million in follow-on capital, not just from local African investors, but also from some of the most successful funds in the world internationally. And that's really, really exciting for us. In terms of how we're going to deploy after first close, we're going to do we have 4 deals for immediate deployment. We have 15 deals that have gone through initial founders calls, and that will be sort of the second tier that we'll do in 2 weeks post first close. And then in 2 months first close, we have 40 deals that have already been pre-screened that we're then going to continue to look through to make sure that we have an ongoing pipeline of deals for this year and next year. Onto the impact metrics. I have 2 million users and patients reached, nearly $100 million in follow-on capital raised, 13,000 direct and indirect jobs, 49% in the companies that we've invested in, 49.5%, so almost 50% of the people in management are women, and almost 60% of the total staff employed by our portfolio companies are women, and they have impact over 10 countries across the continent. So the first case study from our portfolio that I wanted to speak about is the largest chain of low-cost diagnostic centers in Nigeria. When we invested, they only had 1 center in Ibadan. Now they have 17 operational sites in 10 states and have served nearly 300,000 patients during the time that they've been in operation, conducting 240,000 diagnostic tests. 60% of these patients are women of reproductive age. So in terms of our impact metrics, in terms of cost of healthcare, we've had impact there. In terms of impact on women, we've had impact there. And in terms of really changing healthcare and the scale of healthcare in Africa, we've had a lot of impact there. So that's a company that we're super proud of. The second company that I'm going to be talking about is a company called LifeBank, which is the Amazon of low-cost medical supplies in Africa. LifeBank operates in 3 African countries, focusing on blood and oxygen supplies, as well as hospital consumables like gloves and catheters and sort of basic medical supplies. This company has served 15,000 patients and partnered with 3,000 hospitals across the continent. What LifeBank is best known for is the units of blood that are delivered to mothers during the time that they're giving birth, reducing maternal mortality materially by delivering blood to mothers when they need it most. One of the questions that we get asked is why venture capital, why VC, why are we investing in technology and technology-enabled companies? And I think that people, because VC is quite a niche industry, people don't really understand how much the venture capital asset class punches above its weight to deliver impact in its own right. So the S&P 500 is the leading indicator of the US stock market and the economy. And it represents 5 large publicly traded companies. And according to a professor at Stanford, over 1 in 6 of these S&P 500 companies were venture capital funded. So 1 in 10 would be 10%. Would be 1%. This is 1 in 6 of every single of the biggest publicly listed companies in America was backed by venture capital. 6 out of 10 of the largest companies on the S&P 500 were venture capital. So when you look at the 10 largest companies on the largest stock exchange in the world, 6 out of 10 of them were venture capital funded. And venture capital funded companies on the S&P represent over $20 trillion in value. That's a number that's hard to even contemplate because $1 billion is a lot of money. $1 trillion is a lot of money. $20 trillion is an extraordinary amount of money. And that's nearly 50% of the entire S&P. So even though venture capital is quite niche, and is less money goes into venture capital than most asset classes, you can see that in terms of economic impact, venture capital funded companies really punch above their weight. And that is the kind of value that the venture capital asset class can really bring into Africa. The second question we ask is why Africa? And when I'm asked why Africa, I actually speak about China. In China, by 2008, there were no unicorns. So no billion-dollar tech companies in 2008. But just a few years later, by 2011, just 3 years later, there were 14 billion-dollar companies. So they went from 0 to 14 billion-dollar tech companies in just 3 years. And then by 2018, there were 68 unicorns. So with just in 10 years, China was able to build from 0 to nearly 100. And that is the speed of technology, and that's the advantage that technology companies give us. That scale, that adaptability, and that innovation is what we want to invest in. By 2100, the population of Africa will be 10 times China's population. And there's a really interesting bit of work that was published, I think 2 years ago by Danny Roderick and Joseph Stiglitz, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, that predicted that Africa would not follow the export-led manufacturing development path that East Asia took, but actually the innovation and technology and services are essential components required for Africa's path to prosperity. A significant proportion of Africa's population currently lives below the poverty line. And the reason why I mentioned China is because China was able to lift 1 billion people out of poverty within a very short space of time. And we believe that impact investing is a big factor or a big sort of contributor to lifting the same number of lives out of poverty here in Africa. So in conclusion, I've spoken about the definition of impact investing. And I think if there's anything that I want people to take away, it's the fact that impact and financial returns are not mutually exclusive. You can actually make impact whilst having top tier sort of benchmark beating financial returns. That's the first thing. We then spoke about the history of impact investing. And one of the things I pointed out is that it's not a new fad. It's not this new woke idea. It's not sort of something that Gen Z are sort of invented, but actually impact investing has a really, really, really long history. And the formalization of impact investing into sort of a separate asset class, I guess, is what's new. We then want to talk about HealthCap and how we've chosen to make specific impact in the areas of healthcare and financial inclusion as our key sectors, while also focusing on gender and maternal mortality. And then lastly, we spoke about why we chose the VC asset class and why we chose the continent of Africa. And on the VC asset class, I explained how VC just simply punches above its weight with every sort of measurable impact in terms of looking at the tiny amount of money that goes into VC versus 6 out of 10 of the biggest companies in the whole of America being VC backed. Finally, we went on to talk about Africa, and if there's anything to sort of take away for the audience thinking about investing in Africa, it's the fact that by 2100, Africa will be 10 times the size of China in terms of population. And even though throughout history we haven't seen population growth always be followed by economic growth, but throughout history we've also seen that it usually follows population growth. So you generally, if you're looking for a trend in the data, you'll see that population growth is usually followed by massive economic growth. And for Nigerians in the room, by 2100, Nigeria's population is actually predicted to outpace China's population, making Nigeria by 2100 the second largest country in the world, second only to China, and second only to India. So we really think that Nigeria is going to be a massive economic force in the coming years. I want to finish with a quote that I really like because it reminds me of sometimes how we view capital as the end rather than the beginning. And that quote is that capital is meant to serve humanity, not the other way around. Thank you.
Oh, wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Ola, for driving this home and really reminding us what is important and really just admonishing us to prioritize investing in Africa, because I mean, there are so many problems that still need to be solved on the African continent. And we understand that investing for returns is quite important, but also investing for impact is super important, because that is how we can really shift the needle as far as taking Africa from where it is currently to a prospering continent. And I really appreciate you for taking this time to do this presentation. I don't know if every other person here feels the same energy that I just felt now. Please, can you say something in the chat board if you enjoyed this presentation today? Thank you again, Dr. Ola. So moving on, we will be having case study presentations from some of our very interesting founders. Like Dr. Ola has mentioned, we have some warehouse deals, about 16 of them. And some of our founders have been doing really amazing. You know, they are not just out there killing it in terms of their metrics numbers, they're also killing it in terms of their impact in the African ecosystem. We have two of them who would be doing the presentation today in the presence of Folake Owodeni of Emergency Response Africa. Folake has been on this for over 5 years. You know what it is when a problem is home to you and you really want to do everything it takes to ensure that everyone around you is getting the needed solution. Emergency Africa is ensuring that many more Nigerians and many more Africans have access to emergency responses when they need it, as at when the problem is occurring, and not at a later time. One of the challenges for many people who live in the African continent, one of the challenges we experience here is that timeliness in terms of emergency response. And it is one of the things that the Emergency Response Africa, led by Folake Owodini, is trying to tackle. And Folake will be sharing her story, her impact story with us, her journey so far, and how she has stuck with this to really just improve the quality of healthcare access and even affordability in the African continent. Thank you so much for joining us today, Folake. And you have the floor now, ma'am.
So thank you so much to the HealthCap team for giving me the opportunity to join in this, and huge congratulations to Dr. Ola and the team for pulling together an impact report. I think it's really valuable to see what the time and effort and money that's been spent is actually going into, and being able to measure that tangible impact is critical. So Emergency Response Africa is one of the portfolio companies of HealthCap. And we're particularly glad and grateful to have HealthCap as one of our early investors because of the nature of the work that we do and the unique expertise that they bring. So just for context, Folake Owodini, my name. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Emergency Response Africa. And we're a team of individuals with a background in public health, in software development, and in business that are really trying to close Africa's emergency care gap. It was said very briefly earlier that we face a lot of challenges on the continent. Whenever there's a medical emergency, people oftentimes just don't have anybody to call or don't know who to call. And even when there is somebody to call, the response can be very slow and unreliable. And unfortunately, what it translates to is millions of deaths across the continent every single year. I always like to share, some numbers specific to Nigeria. But starting with a very important piece of research that we came across early in our journey. There's research that shows that 54% of all of the deaths that happen in lower middle income countries like Nigeria can actually be prevented if there is an active, responsive emergency medical services system. So what it means for Nigeria is that 1.23 million deaths that happen every single year could actually be prevented if we have access to timely emergency response. And that cuts across, many different causes of emergencies, whether it's cardiovascular disease, accidents and injuries, pregnancy-related emergencies all across. The other statistic that's quite shocking is the fact that this preventable loss of life actually costs the African economy over $1.3 trillion every year. So if we implement an effective emergency services system across the continent, the cost savings to the African economy is huge. Right now, there are varying numbers in terms of the market size, but there's one figure that shows that the ambulance services market in the Middle East and Africa is about $4.6 billion. But of course, we can imagine that Africa contributes a very minuscule portion of that. And so it just goes to show that there's certainly an opportunity to transform this space, and that market is really ripe for innovation, which is where we come in. So Emergency Response Africa really set out to solve this problem by using technology to connect anyone that's experiencing a medical emergency with the largest network of first responders, ambulances, and hospitals using a simple technology platform. Now, since we started in 2021, so we have been working on this for the last 5 years, but we began operations in 2021. We've addressed more than 5,000 incidents. Our responder network has grown to over 380 responders in 9 different cities within Nigeria. We've trained more than 1,600 individuals in first aid and have secured a number of corporate partnerships, but also government partnerships. And those government partnerships are really important to highlight because one of the things that we experienced very early on is that providing quality emergency medical services is simply expensive. It is costly and it is out of reach for the average person, not to talk of the large population of poor that simply could never access it, but actually are the ones who need it the most. And so those government partnerships today give us access to over 2 million people for whom we're able to provide services for free at the point of use. I've talked a little bit about the market opportunity, but one thing I'll just highlight is from our research, a survey that we conducted back in 2019, 92% of the cases that are arriving at hospital emergency departments are not arriving by any sort of EMS. They're coming by taxi, private car. People are just, they're figuring their way around the lack of a solution. And so what that means is that there is a huge non-consumer market, if you will, that really needs to be brought into the emergency medical services net. And that is really what Emergency Response Africa strives to do. You can go to the next slide. So I just want to highlight a couple of points around impact, since that is the core of this conversation. There are several SDGs that we cut across in the work that we do, but I'll just highlight 3 of them. First, of course, is the good health and well-being. We're seeing tangible reduction in maternal and infant mortality, and I'll highlight one story, right at the end of what I share. But the other interesting thing is the majority of the cases that we attend to, about 70% of the cases we attend to, are actually related to non-communicable diseases. And there's a variety there, but it just speaks to the fact that these diseases have a huge implications for people's lives, but also even economically, because when the breadwinner of a family suddenly passes, you have a whole family and potentially future generations that are plunged into poverty. The fact that this system exists, especially in collaboration with the government, is starting to strengthen emergency preparedness for those states. And we're also starting to see a strengthening in referral networks, so referral between primary, secondary, and tertiary levels of care. In terms of economic growth, we're certainly seeing job creation. In Nigeria, paramedics have traditionally not had many opportunities to actually practice their skills and what they went to school for. A lot of them oftentimes end up working strictly within hospital settings, conducting hospital transfers, which is not a great use of their skill set. So in the work that we're doing, we're creating opportunities for these people to use the skills that they've developed in a way that maybe I won't go so far as to say rivals going abroad, but I definitely think that we will get there to the point where we're able to help at least slow the brain drain that is coming simply because these people lack opportunities locally. And then finally, when it comes to gender, this is something that we're really proud of. So I don't have the slide on here, but we are a female-led team. Myself and my co-founder, both of us are women, African women. My co-founder is from Ghana. Our management team is 70% female. Our staff are 50% female across board. And we're very intentional about that, even in our engineering team. And it actually translates into the patients that we serve. 55% of the patients are female. Interestingly, 70% of the first aid trainees that we've trained are also female, and 13% of the patient cases are specifically maternal and infant related cases. So again, speaking to impact, there's a broad spectrum of impacts that this business really covers. Let me just wrap up by sharing that you can go to the next slide, please. As a company, we are in the process of raising a seed round, a $1.5 million round, cutting across both equity and grants. We're very excited to have, HealthCap involved for follow-on funding. And for us, there's so much that we want to do with this in terms of deliverables. We're looking to bring on board more of those public-private partnerships. We're looking to strengthen the technology to be able to, for example, leverage cutting-edge AI to improve dispatching, but also leverage simple tools like USSD to make our technology as accessible to the furthest reaches of the continent as possible. We certainly want to strengthen our response network. The more that we can do that, the better quality care we can provide. And ultimately, of course, we want to be able to grow that revenue to a point where not only are we EBITDA positive, but we can provide strong returns to those that have invested in us. So I just want to say again, thank you. I think you can go to the last slide, which is really just a thank you. HealthCap has been an incredible support on our journey so far. Dr. Ola herself personally was actually one of the first people I spoke to, when I set out to build this company, and we're really just grateful to be on this journey with them. So thank you, and all the best with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Folake, for really just telling us your story. I mean, not a lot of people are aware of what you do, or perhaps they see it on LinkedIn, but right now you really just told us, you gave us the numbers, you told us what you've been up to for the last couple of years, and you really just showed us why you're so passionate about this and why you're not even stopping, because this is still day one for you. We really appreciate working with you at HealthCap. We are very proud of what you do, and we only hope that it can get much better from this point. Congratulations to your team, and we hope to keep collaborating. Thank you, Folake, again. And to everyone who is still here, there's more to come. We hope you're not tired. We have another presentation from Seth Kwanzaa. Seth Kwanzaa is the CEO of Instant Rad. So I'm just going to be reading what Instant Rad does. Instant Rad specializes in providing instant high-quality medical diagnostic services, and just really helping to revolutionize medical imaging and diagnostics through advanced technology, allowing for rapid and accurate results. Now, in healthcare, there are like 3 aspects that are major that we expect that every one who is innovating around is really just working towards. And of course, according to World Health Organization, it's also very important for accessible healthcare, for healthcare to also be affordable. So it means that people should be able to access the services. It should be very timely for them. It should be very quick as and when they need them. It should also be affordable. And if we look at what Instant Rad is doing, they have found a way to really just provide rapid and accurate results for persons through their high quality medical diagnostic services. It's been a pleasure working with you, Seth. We really appreciate what you do at Instant Rad. And today we just want you to share with many of our friends who are logged in today, share your story with us, what it's been so far, and why you're so passionate about this part of impact in Africa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Hello?
I can hear you, Seth.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Good afternoon. I'm Seth Kwanzaa of Instant Rad. Thank you so much, Dr. Ola, and the incredible work that you're doing for bringing together everybody here, especially when it comes to healthcare. We know that healthcare is one of the areas that touches every aspect of life. And as much as we may ignore it, but healthcare is really, really important. Unfortunately, the issue of healthcare in Africa is quite dire, where we contribute about 25% of global mortality, and yet less than 1% of investment goes towards healthcare. So we really appreciate what Dr. Ola is doing and what the HealthCap group is doing all together. For the sake of time, I will summarize what Instant Rad is trying to do and what we've been able to achieve. But it's quite interesting that for countries like Ghana and Nigeria, Ghana having a population of 33 million people, have less than 80 radiologists. Now, radiologists are doctors who are specialized to interpret medical images such as X-ray, CT, MRI. Now, why are these important? These are usually the first line of diagnostics. Without proper diagnostics, the intervention on treatment of diseases is pretty much impossible. So the first line of the medical journey is diagnostics, making sure that we have identified the problem and applying the right medication and treatment. Unfortunately, this is the area where there's a lot of delays. Unfortunately, this is the area where there's a lot of gaps. And so you can, as stated in Ghana, for instance, there's one radiologist to almost every 700,000 people. It's even worse in Nigeria, where you have over 200 million people and less than 300 radiologists. So how do these medical images get reported? How do these X-ray, CT, MRI cases get interpreted for intervention, early intervention? So the problem, it begins with even the subspecialists, the people who are able to do the interpretation. We don't have enough in the system. And much more, another problem is that the standard way of doing radiology is not applied. For instance, a lot of people would take pictures of the X-ray and send it on WhatsApp, right, to doctors to look at it, and that's not the standard way of doing radiology, because if you miss a tumor, that could be the end of the patient's life, or the patient can end up dying. So InstantRad decided to build a technology that would give radiologists access, that will help radiologists to access these images from all the different hospitals, all on one centralized platform at the same time. The interesting thing about InstantRad is that we're able to now welcome African radiologists in the diaspora to help support and strengthen the local radiologists in their work locally to reduce their workload. The reason why this is very important is because when it comes to even the training in the African continent, some of the diseases that are now coming up are kind of new to the continent, because we are now shifting from communicable to non-communicable diseases, as the last presentation highlighted. So a lot of lifestyle diseases are being introduced, tumors, and issues that are being faced by so many patients that are not familiar with the physician. So we are introducing kind of like a hybrid solution where African radiologists in the diaspora can now join the radiologists locally to help with interpretation. In the past, before InstantRad, was utilized by certain facilities, interpretation of some of these cases took between 3 days to months before patients can receive interpretation. Now we've been able to successfully reduce.
I'm really
Yes.
sorry to interject. So could you just move back a little? It just appears that the video is too bold. Your face is almost filling the screen. I don't know.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Really appreciate
All right,
that.
no
Thanks.
problem. All right, no problem. Yeah, we've been able to now successfully reduce the interpretation timeline, which usually took days, weeks, and months, to now less than 4 hours for routine cases. And for emergency cases, we are now doing 30 minutes. Just 2 weeks ago, I had a friend of mine went to Ghana and basically had a stroke. And this was a 50-year-old man who basically was, trying to visit a continent and from the United States. And all of a sudden, he had a stroke incident. Thankfully, when he was rushed to the hospital, they were using InstantRad. And within 10 minutes, we were able to identify an infarct or, just some rupture in the brain, and it was attended to in a very fast, quick time to save his life. So this is just one example of the impact that InstantRad has on the medical field. Number two is that now hospitals have the power to determine how fast they want interpretation of the cases. It used to be the case that the radiologist could just, report at their own time. Now, InstantRad has given hospitals the ability to determine that, hey, this is an emergency case. We need a case in an hour. We need it in 2 hours. We need it in 30 minutes, which gives them more control. And also, the second thing is that we've given hospitals the ability to access more radiologists. So not only are they relying on one radiologist now they have access to 10, 15, 20 radiologists who can attend to their cases without any issues. As we started this business in 2018, and we pretty much bootstrapped it. But in 2021, HealthCap came to support us. And since then, we've been able to grow exponentially. We are now expanded from Ghana to Nigeria, and now we are just early this year we moved to Cameroon, expanding our services there. Our team is a great team of software developers and clinicians. About 60% of our team are female, who are software developers. Some of the projects that we are currently embarking right now are actually focused on breast cancer research. One of the issues that is facing West Africa, especially when it comes to cancers, is breast cancer. We have some of the most aggressive breast cancer cases in the world. And even there's a lot of research entering into that. And so a lot of non-for-profit around the world are coming into Africa to do the research. We partnered with a couple of them who are now giving, free mammograms. And the goal is for us to provide them with quick interpretation and then also to use the data to generate artificial intelligence modules that is specific to Africa. This is really being found that some of the AI solutions that have been developed do not necessarily address the African subject. So we are, I believe InstantRad is the largest or one of the largest repository of medical imaging data on the continent. I think we are getting close to 50 terabytes of data. And we are hoping that we'll be able to use those to generate modules that is specific to the African continent. We are really excited of what is ahead of us. We are currently in our seed stage in fundraising to expand from Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon to 10 other countries in Africa. We are focusing on Francophone states, countries that are speaking French, and also in East Africa as well. We have some interest there. Our goal is to introduce more products for interpretation, and also to allow radiologists to do what we call peer-to-peer training. Currently, we use Zoom and other portals to do the training, but we want to intensify that and also allow the hospitals to be part of this training module, because part of the exodus and the brain drain that occurs in Africa has a lot to do with the lack of continuing medical education. And so we as InstantRad have been having webinar sessions every month to educate radiographers, radiologists, clinicians on the latest diseases and disease presentations. And we are hoping to expand that further across the continent. So yeah, we are, I'm almost done with the presentation here. We are at a stage of raising about $1.2 million. Our goal is to strengthen our product further, to expand into different countries. We are in conversation with some of the state and government, federal government agencies and facilities. We are hoping to also introduce product that would allow cardiologists to also partake, because there's also a shortage of cardiologists as well. And hopefully in about 5 years, we can move on to pathology as well. So yeah, this is just a little snippet of InstantRad and the impact that we are creating. We are excited about what we are doing right now. We are hoping that with your support, we'll be able to extend this impact to all over the continent, especially because we are very affordable service that we offer to people on the continent. And also our quick turnaround time has saved so many lives. Actually, one more story before I end. One of the interesting things that we learned was a lot of people usually travel to the UK or the US for medical treatment, just because sometimes they may think the talent is not locally available, or the equipment are not there, or the skill set is not available there. So we had a situation where a lady from Nigeria traveled to the UK, but because they took the scan and the scan was put on the CD, they took it to the UK, and unfortunately, when they went there, the CD was corrupted. So basically, they travel all the way to a place where I spent thousands of dollars to a location where the images that they had was corrupted. With InstantRad, they were now able to even remain in Nigeria and get interpretation of the case. And locally in Nigeria, they were able to give the patient treatment, and the patient is well now and well and alive, and we really appreciate all that the product is giving people on the African continent. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much, Dr. Ola. Thank you so much for all the investors. on this call. We are hoping to have further discussions and conversations on how we can expand our services. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Seth. It's been a really inspiring presentation, and having to learn from you, all of the things that your team has been up to in the last couple of months and years, and how you've been able to really just offer value to the African continent is very impressive. And I'm sure that services like this would also add to, a decrease to the medical tourism. We're experiencing a lot of medical tourism in the African continent, and we really just want that to stop, because one of the things also affecting the exchange rate is because we are moving, lots of funds out of the country. So much money is not being spent here. And so we really just want to ensure that the African continent works. And for it to work, we also need to ensure that we have healthcare available for everyone, affordable and also accessible. And people trust that the medical personnel that are here are competent enough to really handle all of these cases. That was what Seth was trying to buttress in his presentation. And we are here for it in HealthCap. It is things like this innovation like this, ideas like this, and solutions like this that we want to partner with to really just add more value to the lives of people, improve the quality of the lives of so many Africans, and really just ensure that the African continent is prospering, not just financially, but also health-wise. Thank you again, Seth, for really giving us this beautiful presentation. And to everyone who's been listening so far, we've had 3 presentations, one from Dr. Ola Brown, another from Folake, and then Seth gave us this last presentation. So I don't know if you have any questions for any of our presenters. We would love to take them now. Please put your questions in the chat box. Dr. Ola is back now, and she would be taking your questions. So we'll just give a few minutes for that. Dr. Ola, anything you want to share with our listening audience while they prepare their questions?
I actually have a question for Seth, if he's still here.
Yes, I am.
I wanted to sort of and speak from, have a few questions about AI and where you see the future of radiology and AI going. I trained as a doctor, it makes me feel old now, almost 10 years ago. And AI has really sort of revolutionized the way that we make diagnoses. So I just wanted you to speak a bit to that, as well as the general context of AI in Africa.
Absolutely, yeah. So without question, AI is pretty much changing the world, and it's almost inevitable in the healthcare field. I believe that the impact of AI is really significant. However, the human factor will be needed, especially when it comes to radiology. One of the benefits that I see AI playing in radiology is its predictability. So for instance, there have been use cases where AI was able to predict that a patient will be able to develop breast cancer in the next 5 years. And so that was, it's a very powerful to use in that regard, so that early treatment can be, implemented as soon as possible. There are also non-interpretive AI benefits. So sometimes when we think of AI, we limit it to maybe the clinical aspect. There are actually operational AI benefits. So that would reduce, operational inefficiencies and workflows. And that could be even used in, let's say, scheduling appointments, or yes, anything that has to do with the non-interpretive aspect of it. So from a non-clinical standpoint, AI can be used to make workflows more efficient. I'm sure that, if you go to a hospital in our part of the world, sometimes you see so many people crowded in the outpatient unit, and they're calling out names, and there's a lot of chaos. AI can help reduce that chaos and make the system more efficient. From a clinical standpoint, AI would significantly give physicians, I call it a futuristic eye into, okay, what is this tumor, or whether it looks benign or not, is it going to develop into a cancer later on. It would also serve as a second eye for radiologists, right? Because sometimes, depending on the equipment that is being used, sometimes you may have artifacts on the imaging, and it may not be seen readily, but it could be a tumor, and AI could be able will be used to interpret that. For us at InstantRad, we seek to use AI to pretty much for both non-clinical and clinical use cases. So for the clinical aspect, we really want AI to develop what we call a preliminary interpretation within 5 seconds once the images is uploaded onto our system. So once the system identified and develop a preliminary report, then the human radiologist will come in and basically confirm and adjust where adjustment needs to be. So in my mind, I think the long-term effect is going to be significantly positive. However, a lot of work needs to be done to perfect it. This is why we are in the process of data collection and making sure that we have clean data to develop AI specific to the African continent, because that is one thing about AI. Unfortunately, most of the AI for healthcare that's been developed has not focused on African subjects. So most of the AI are pretty much ineffective when you present them on the African continent. Case in point is the breast cancer issue I was talking about. There were about 36 AI software that were used on women of African descent, and they all failed because women of African descent have denser breast, and so that needs to be factored into developing the AI. So we're excited to be at the forefront of perhaps something new for Africa, and to reap the benefits from that. I hope I answered your question.
Oh, that was fabulous. Thank you so much. Folake, are you still there? Okay, Folake has left. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Yes, it appears that some persons have sent in their questions already. So I'm going to read this one. It says, so the question is, I saw the presentation that established frameworks like the UN SDGs provide standardized methods for measuring the outcomes of impact investment. Could you elaborate on how HealthCap Africa measures the social and environmental impact of its investments? So Dr. Ola, this is for you.
Absolutely. So we're currently mapping, so we have a qualitative and quantitative way of measuring our impact. From the quantitative methodology, we look at the number of patients impacted, we look at gender, specifically the numbers of women in executive positions and the numbers of female founders. And then we also look at financial inclusion, and what we're looking at there is SME loans and women's loans. So those are the sort of metrics, and we map them onto the SDGs. So we look at the SDGs and say, okay, which SDGs are we most affecting? And then we also have qualitative means, like asking our portfolio founders questions and taking quotes from them. So patient stories, where we listen to either them relating a patient story, or speaking directly to end users and customers as well, to get more qualitative information about sort of lived experience of customers and patients.
Thank you, Dr. Ola. And I hope that Onyekosola Aregbesola, who asked the question, has gotten response to that. But if you are still not clear, you can drop a follow-on question in the chat box. Another question here says, Dr. Ola, I find it intriguing by the return on investment from your first fund. What are the critical benchmarks to support a unicorn startup? Secondly, what advice will you give to someone like me who is passionate about angel investing / VC, but facing a challenge of finding a mentor who can talk me into it, I guess, yeah.
So how do you find great companies early? I think is a mixture of an art and a science, and there's a few team members on the call who we work continuously sort of every day to try to sort of understand from the very beginning, when there's not much evidence, what companies are going to be successful or not. And it's very different from public market investing, where most of the companies are established. So think about the companies in America that are on the public market. It's companies like Facebook. You already know that Facebook is successful. Google, Tesla, SpaceX, all of these companies are already successful. But when you're doing startup investing, then you really have to be able, nobody needs to see into the future to probably know that Netflix is going to continue to be a going concern and successful. But it's a lot different when you're looking at somebody with a business plan or somebody with a bright idea. So the framework that I use when I'm investing in early stage companies is looking at what I call the jockey, the horse, and the market. So the jockey is the person in horse riding that is riding the horse. And when you want to sort of, if you're into horse racing, you know that jockeys are quite important because of the person controlling the horse. So looking at the jockey, the person's background, what has led the person to this stage is really important. But then, you know, it's not an exact science. You see people that have reached the most senior executive positions in some of the biggest companies in the world, right? And when they go out on their own, they fail. So how do you now, beyond their background, you need to be able to make a subjective measurement of just their hustle and their determination not to quit and their sort of focus on the business. And that's a really more subjective leaning, where you have to speak to the founders, listen to them present, listen to their unique ideas. And really, one of the things that I like to hear in a founder's story is some victory over adversity in their past. So in their personal story, I like to hear something about their story that has taken a lot of determination to overcome. And it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody from a poor background, because even some rich kids, right, they just face unexpected challenges and how they've been able to overcome that. And that's really a test of people's resilience, because entrepreneurship, I think, is not necessarily about being the smartest person in the room. It's probably about being the most resilient and long-suffering and persistent person in the room. And I think that that's what all of our team members try. I mean, in our investment committee meetings, sometimes internally we can spend 2 hours debating one company. And what we're trying to look for is a combination of, or at least in the founder, is a combination of sort of background experience in the sector or expertise, as well as that grit and perseverance and determination. That is a really subjective sort of metric. And then after the jockey, we look at the horse. What exactly are they selling? And famously, Warren Buffett said that he would rather invest in an average team in a good market than invest in the most spectacular team or just a bad product. And sometimes, you know, sometimes there's just a wave, right? There's just a wave of things that are going to move, and just a rising tide lifts all the boats in that sector. So we're always looking for sectors that are growing rapidly, sectors that have the potential for exponential scale. I can remember another Warren Buffett quote, and he says that he always invests in very easy to understand, simple companies, because he knows that at some point, somebody that is not that smart is going to run the company, and he wants to make sure that it doesn't crash when somebody not smart is running the company. So you know how large companies work. At some stage, some very politically savvy person who's good at building relationships will rise to the top and become CEO, and the person might not know what they're doing. But he wants the company so good that even when that person is CEO, it will still continue growing because it's just in such a fantastic sector. So we do a lot of sector analysis. We look at, I mean, we in the sense of our sort of analytics, we're more PE than VC. So we really, really look at the sector. We look at sort of the types of companies that have been built in other emerging markets. We look at them in developed markets. We look at acquisitions in the space. We look at the multiples of those acquisitions. We look at the market size. We analyze the consumers, who's going to use the product, etc. And that's another big thing that we look at in terms of the products, and the quality of the product as well. What's the code? How easy is it to use? Anybody that has had us as investors before know that we try and use the product. We try and download the product, see how easy it is to use. So the jockey, the horse, and the market is really the way that our approach to, you know, finding the next generation of unicorns, and that's worked well for us so far. I think the second question was about mentorship. And I do have people that I speak to and get mentorship from. And I believe that venture capital is an apprenticeship business. So it's like being a mechanic. It's great to learn under people. But more and more, education is becoming a choice. And I think there's lots of great information online. There's lots of great books. There's lots of great educational materials, seminars, webinars that you can go to if you're looking for mentorship. So your mentor doesn't necessarily have to be one specific person that you speak to every week. It could be someone online. Like there's a lot of people that I haven't met, a lot of great investors that I follow, that I'm always quoting Warren Buffett. I've never met him, but he's sort of the greatest mentor that I've ever had in terms of investing. I read all of his annual reports. He's the greatest investor to me that has ever lived. So I follow him. And I think that, speaking the greatest investors in the world, if you're sort of an activist investor, then looking at some of the deals that Carl Icahn has done, for instance, looking at some of the deals that Bridgewater Associates has done, for instance, and how they've been like super aggressive. And if you're in the private equity space, looking at the history of Carlyle deals, looking at the founders of KKR and how they built out their leveraged buyout platforms, can really be intuitive. And I've never met any of these guys, but definitely I think that they've been mentors to me as an investor.
Thank you, Dr. Ola, for sharing that. One other question from Aaron Wilson. He's saying, does HealthCap have any impact measurement toolkits that are publicly available? This may help other organizations and projects with measuring impact for their work.
Absolutely. So we don't have any impact measurement toolkits that are publicly available, but there are companies that do this, as, a business. And if you look online, there are actually a few companies that can help you develop your own toolkits. We developed ours internally, and obviously it's still evolving. And as we sort of grow as a company, we'll continue to evolve that framework and have even deeper insights. But I think the basic framework of having your quantitative measures, having a sort of set of impact measurements that you follow, whether that's the SDGs, whether that's something else, you can use 2 or 3 external sort of validated sort of impact systems, and then having qualitative stories as well. Like I love some of the stories that Seth told and Folake told, which are qualitative, right, from the founders. So quotes from the founders and qualitative stories from either the founders or their customers, really being able to tell unique lived experience stories about the products as well.
Thank you, Doctor. So I'm going to be merging about 3 or 4 questions because they sound similar. They are asking more about HealthCap. Does HealthCap invest only in startups in the health sector? That's one. The other is saying, what are you looking for in companies you invest in? How can one apply for your VC backing? And the last one, or the third one, also, would HealthCap be looking at exploring future investments in virtual reality? And this last one is saying, do you also invest in companies at idea stage?
Okay, that's a whole load of questions. So I'll start with what sectors does HealthCap invest in? HealthCap invests in companies in Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa that are either in health tech or in fintech. So those are the 2 sectors, and those are the 4 countries that we invest in. We might invest in other African countries if they have significant operations in one of our focus countries, or if they're rapidly moving into one of our focus countries. And then, are we investing in virtual reality? I see a lot of interesting virtual reality deals in healthcare. And I think that one of the areas that virtual reality can really help is actually in surgical training. Our mantra in medical school was see one and then do one. And I don't think that that's particularly safe, that you see a procedure and then you do it immediately on somebody. And virtual reality can help us practice our surgical skills in a really safe environment. And I know that there's a lot of startups working on that. I haven't really thought about any virtual reality applications for financial services, but I'm sure they are. And in that case, if they're related to one of our sectors, then we'd definitely be interested in investing. We love speaking to new founders. We love getting new deal flow. We love sort of analyzing new startups. We're always interested in hearing your ideas. And then even if we don't eventually invest, if you've gotten to a particular stage in our investment process, then you'll probably get some really useful advice and some referrals. And we try and do that. Even if we don't invest, we try and like point you in the right direction as to, a sort of investor or an accelerator or a grant program or some learning materials that can help you in your entrepreneurial journey. So if you go to our website, which will be typed in the chat below, we have actually an open poll, so you can actually just submit your deck online. I think one of the things that is really harsh, particularly to women founders, is that a lot of VCs sort of function only on warm referrals, which means you need to know the partner or you need to know one of the senior executives in the firm before you can get funded. We're not like that. We check our portal, we record every single deck that comes into the portal. So don't think you need to know somebody before you pitch us. We'll look at your deck, even though we don't have a personal relationship with you or you haven't had a warm intro. So we believe that entrepreneurs and the best entrepreneurs in the world can look like anyone and come from anywhere. And we also know that it's not really fair to women to ask for a warm intro, because men just have denser networks usually than women. Women tend to sort of not have so many networks in financial services. Women tend to be more isolated, particularly women with kids. Their friendships fall away as they're, focusing on the home, and they just don't have those strong networks to be able to pitch their ideas. And we feel like that's, even people that live outside Lagos. So I don't know if anybody is sort of living outside Lagos, outside Nairobi, outside Cairo, outside Cape Town and Johannesburg, the same thing, right? If you're living in Durban, if you're living outside Cairo, then it's harder to pitch. It's harder to have those networks because those networks tend to be concentrated in the main cities of Africa. So we are super excited. I mean, this week I spoke to a founder. His company is based in Ibadan and he never comes to Lagos, right? So we like to get inbound, and we like cold inbound particularly because we know that that helps us to see the deals that nobody else is seeing. And do we invest in companies at idea stage? We do occasionally. It depends on the strength of the founder. And I think that, and the founding team and what they're doing, but absolutely, yeah, pre-seed and seed is our stage. And when we see a really good deal that we think has legs, we think that has synergies with our portfolio, we'll invest in an idea stage company. I hope I answered all the questions. Maybe I missed one.
You did, actually. I was going to read them one after the other, but I mean, you just seem to have captured everything and you answered them. Thank you. So almost to the last question, but I think we have two more. Yes. As someone said, in the slides of Dr. Ola's presentation, I think he mentioned infrastructure as an investment area for HealthCap. Where can I find more information about HealthCap's interest in this area? My social enterprise, the Community Revolution, is working on a few projects in this area.
Fantastic. So right now we're focused on VC, but we do have two asset classes that we want to focus on. But right now we're really focused on our VC investment for now. So, keep on watching us and you'll see it sort of in the social media when we start looking at other asset classes.
And to the final question, I guess, although I'm seeing much more questions here. All right, let's see how far we can go. But this question is saying, what do you think about logistics' rapid rise? The likes of Move drove H1 in 2024. What is your take for the leading sector in H2 2024? Also, will fintech funding go back to number one in deal flows?
So what do I think about logistics? I think that logistics is a really interesting area, even though some people would see Move as more a fintech, as well as a logistics company. I really think that logistics is an interesting area, particularly in Nigeria. But, I also think that it requires a certain amount of expertise to invest well, because some of the biggest sort of logistics companies from sort of 2019, 2018, 2020 have not done well. Sort of looking back and looking forward, haven't really delivered the returns that they promised. So I think it's an area that requires, expert lens when you're investing. And that's why sort of post the VC boom, we really decided, going from a fund one where we were, I was a generalist investor investing in everything, to a more specialist investor where I can really kind of add value in a unique way to sectors that I know really well. And what Obi didn't tell you, she's also a pharmacist. Well, she was a pharmacist, studied pharmacy before she started her career in finance, currently taking her CFA. So you'll find that everyone in HealthCap is a blend of sort of financial services and healthcare, and that really helps us to be able to support our portfolio companies from a real sort of solid level of expertise, as opposed to a more generalist lens. And I think that that's why we really stand out in the industry.
Thank you, Dr. Ola, and for putting me in the spotlight. That was quite sudden. All right, I think we have one more question before we call it a day. You mentioned investing in Africa, in Nigeria rather, Kenya and South Africa. Do you invest in company based in UK but target market in your mentioned countries?
So we are really sort of focused on Africa. We like companies. I mean, a lot of our companies for different reasons, like to get into Y Combinator, for instance, you have to be a Delaware company. To get into Techstars in certain areas, you have to be certain sort of accelerators require you to register a whole code abroad, and we completely understand that. And when companies are raising follow-on capital from America, Americans don't like investing outside America. So we end up like with these holdcos in different countries. But we try as much as possible to make sure that we're creating jobs on the continent, that the teams are based on the continent, and that the markets are based on the continent. So we ideally like to see a team on the continent, jobs created on the continent, and a company registered on the continent, although we know that there's certain exceptions to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for some persons who are still thinking about their questions, I mean, just like Doctor has said, we have an open door policy. Doctor is online. If you are a comrade, you would have interacted with Dr. Ola by now. So Doctor is accessible on Twitter and on LinkedIn. And if you want to send your pitch decks to us, we've just dropped our website address, www.healthcap.co. You can also pitch us at pitch decks at investor relations or at healthcap.co. Yeah, so any of those avenues, but you can visit our website for all of the info that you need. And if you want some personal touch or some questions that you think were not answered today, you can always interact with Dr. Ola on her social media platform. We thank you all for really joining us today. It's been a spectacular day for us. We've been looking forward to doing this, to really showing the world what we've been up to for the last couple of years and the last couple of months, and the remarkable founders that we've been working with, who have also been working over time to really ensure that we are driving impact to underserved communities. You know, when we say underserved communities, we don't mean the privileged people in Lagos who probably have 24 hours electricity or have, you know, everything really just going on for them. We also mean persons who are in very remote places who perhaps do not have, you know, all of the luxuries of the cities. You know, when Dr. Ola was doing her presentation, she talked about how most of those companies are located in the cities. We want to also create solutions that are driving impact in very remote and underserved communities. And we're just really excited that some of the companies that we've invested in so far have been able to push their solutions to those remote places. And we just want to say that this is day one. We are just starting out because, I mean, until all of, you know, the over 1 billion people in Africa, you know, have access to healthcare and also affordable healthcare, we cannot rest. It is our mandate that we continue to really just fund companies who are creating these innovative solutions and who are just going out there to really just drive impact on a large scale. Thank you all for joining us today. We are already wrapping up. Yes, someone has dropped the link to our pitch decks, just in case, because I could see some founders saying they wanted to reach us and drop, you know, their pitch decks with us. So you can reach us at pitchdecks@healthcap.co. And if you want more information about HealthCap, you can visit our website, www.healthcap.co. And if you are a co-comrade, always reach out to Dr. Ola on Twitter or on her LinkedIn as well. Thank you again for really making our time today to join us on this occasion. And for some persons who asked if this recording was going to be available publicly, yes, we will try to make them available publicly. We understand that the situation today in Nigeria is one that not a lot of people have stable networks, so we will try to make the recordings available on our social media platforms. So please stay tuned to what we are doing and continue to also spread the impact, message across. If you're building something really innovative, something creative, something that is, shifting the needle in Africa as far as impact is concerned, and really just helping people, get access to quality healthcare, or just close that gap as far as financial inclusion is concerned, or as far as gender is concerned, reach out to us. We are willing to partner with you and really just move, the African continent forward. And right now, we will be saying goodbye and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Have an amazing time. It's been a pleasure doing this with you all. My name is Sobiano Dedigwe. See you later. Bye.